The lecture chamber floated like a cathedral suspended in the dark. Gravity was optional here, knowledge wasn't. Hundreds of beings filled the ascending tiers, their bodies glimmering in shades that no human eye could name. Their eyes, if they had any, turned toward the center dais, where Professor Zerthal's elongated frame hovered effortlessly, tendrils of light weaving equations in midair. The hall pulsed with a low hum, the sound of intellect concentrated into arrogance. The professor's voice resonated, melodic and cruelly calm. Civilizations rise, they vanish, but some, my students, reach stability. Humanity, however, is not among them. The word hung like an insult rather than a classification. A few aliens laughed, a series of clicks, whistles, and low vibrations, depending on the species. In the lowest row, a single human sat quietly, the only one among hundreds. His posture was steady, hands clasped, eyes fixed on equations that twisted like galaxies above the dais. His name was Elias Kane, Earth's first representative admitted to the Intergalactic Academy of Thought. It was supposed to be an honor. It felt like standing on trial. Zerthal's tendrils expanded, displaying a spiral of images. Primitive humans, fire, stone tools, wars. Observe the pattern, the professor continued, voice smooth with condescension. They discover, they destroy, they repeat. Intellect without temperance is chaos masquerading as progress. They invent emotion into logic and call it philosophy. A fascinating curiosity, but not evolution. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The professor turned slightly, his featureless face angling toward the human. And yet, he said, almost purring, we allow one of their kind to attend this lecture. Consider a live example of intellectual asymmetry. Elias didn't flinch. He had heard worse on his first day, whispered names in alien tongues that all meant the same thing. Pet primitive, emotional anomaly. He stared at the spiraling equations. They were beautiful, yes, but sterile, balanced to perfection, and therefore dead. Human math was messy, iterative, alive. Zerthal's luminous fingers gestured again, forming a construct of neural pathways. The human brain is a chaos machine, he declared. It seeks order through randomness, efficient in destruction, inefficient in comprehension. They achieved spaceflight through desperation, not insight. That was enough. Elias rose slowly, his voice cutting to the laughter before his reason could stop him. You're wrong. The laughter halted like a system error. 100 pairs of alien eyes turned. The silence was suffocating, alive, expectant. Zerthal's body stiffened. The tendrils dimmed slightly. I beg your pardon, human? Elias's tone was calm but unyielding. You're wrong. Humanity didn't reach the stars through desperation. We got here because we refused to stop asking why. That's not chaos. That's curiosity. The professor tilted his head, the movement slow and precise. Curiosity, he repeated, tasting the word like something sour. An uncontrolled compulsion to seek without purpose. How quaint. Elias met the void where eyes should have been. Without curiosity, you wouldn't have discovered half the laws you preach. You call us primitive because we feel, but maybe that's what you've lost. A low murmur filled the chamber, some scandalized, some intrigued. The professor's tendrils crackled faintly with static. Interesting claim, Zerthal said softly. Perhaps you'd like to prove your species' worth through demonstration, yes? A proof, a single theorem, a human model that contradicts my law of cognitive limitation. Elias's chest tightened. The law of cognitive limitation was the foundation of galactic science. The claim that sentient thought could be perfectly mapped, predicted, bounded. To challenge, it was like a child shouting down gravity. Still, he nodded once. I'll prove you wrong. The professor's voice turned sharp. If you fail, Earth's petition to join the coalition dies with you. Your planet remains unacknowledged, your kind uninvited. Elias didn't hesitate. Then I'd better not fail. The lecture ended in a flurry of alien chatter. By the time the hall emptied, Elias stood alone beneath the fading equations. The air smelled faintly metallic, like ozone before a storm. He stared at the symbols. They were too perfect, complete in a way that made progress impossible. He whispered to himself, perfection is stagnation. We grow by breaking what we build. He left the hall in silence, aware of the eyes following him, some in pity, some in amusement. He knew what they thought. This human would burn out trying to outthink a 1,000-year-old mind born in nebular light. But Elias wasn't trying to outthink Zerthal. He was trying to outfeel him. The corridors of the academy wound endlessly, light pulsing beneath translucent floors like veins. Elias returned to his quarters, a small chamber carved from crystalline walls that shifted color with thought. He sat before the data slate blinking on his desk. The challenge had already been sent, an encoded file labeled proof parameters. When he opened it, the equations unfolded like a storm, 12-dimensional matrices, recursive thought patterns, axioms beyond human notation. It wasn't a challenge. It was mockery. He laughed quietly. You really think this will scare me? He reached for the small, battered notebook beside him, the only analog object in the academy. Inside, lines of handwritten symbols sprawled in pencil, fragment of half-thoughts, sketches of neuron clusters, notes from his father. His father had been no scientist, just a mechanic who fixed old machines in a garage that smelled of oil and rain. When Elias was 10, his father once said, "You can tell a lot about the universe by how an engine fails. The weak parts show you where the strength really lives." He'd never forgotten that. He began translating the alien data into human form, rewriting symbols, creating bridges between incompatible languages of logic. The aliens' math assumed stability as virtue. Human math embraced instability as potential. Somewhere between those two philosophies lay the truth. Hours passed, or rotations, as time here didn't flow linearly. He lost track of it, immersed in silent war between order and intuition. Occasionally he looked out through the transparent wall into the void beyond, an ocean of stars that no longer felt distant. Somewhere among them was Earth, still turning, still noisy, still imperfect. He smiled faintly. They'll see us soon. Words spread quickly. By the next learning cycle, whispers filled the academy. The human had accepted the impossible challenge. Some came to watch, not out of support, but for spectacle. Others, rarer, carried quiet curiosity, a fascination with the species that dared to talk back to a legend. An alien named Thera, translucent and fragile looking like woven glass, approached Elias as he worked in the quiet lab. Her voice was musical, almost gentle. "Elias Kane, you do not need to do this. Zerthal has destroyed reputations older than your planet." He didn't look up. "Then it's about time someone tried." She hesitated. "You misunderstand. He won't simply disprove you. He'll erase your people's standing. Your world will vanish from the archives. No record, no mention." Elias finally met her eyes, or the glowing orbs that serve as such. "Then we'll just have to earn a new place in the records." She watched him in silence for a long moment, then whispered, "You humans are reckless." He smiled. "We call it faith." The next cycles came without rest. Elias no longer measured time in rotations or meals. He measured in breakthroughs and collapses. The alien equation still glowed on the wall of his quarters, but something in his approach had changed. He wasn't trying to solve them anymore. He was trying to feel them, to understand their rhythm the way a musician learns a song by ear rather than by notation. He worked in silence, sometimes muttering to himself, sometimes to the ghosts of every human thinker who had refused to quit. Faint lights from the galactic city outside flickered across his face, turning his tired eyes into small mirrors of distant suns. His thoughts no longer belonged entirely to him. They belonged to the idea of humanity itself. Every stubborn, curious, imperfect fragment of it. The alien data slate projected Zerthal's theorem again, an elegant structure that claimed all sentient cognition could be reduced to predictable patterns. It was flawless, self-sustaining, and deeply wrong. Elias could almost hear the arrogance in its symmetry. Perfection was comforting because it denied growth, but life, real life, thrived on uncertainty. He started translating the theorem into a form he could touch, numbers into images, symbols into patterns. He used color, vibration, even sound. Human intuition had always found truth through abstraction. He remembered reading once that Einstein saw equations as shapes and sounds before symbols. That thought gave him strength. His fingers moved rapidly across the holographic panel, altering constants, inserting imperfections deliberately. The system resisted at first, then began to respond in unpredictable ways, like a locked door testing its hinges. He smiled faintly. That's it, fight back. The door to his chamber opened without sound. Thera stood there again, carrying a translucent sphere that pulsed with faint green light. You haven't eaten, she said quietly. I will, Elias murmured, eyes never leaving the equations. She floated closer, placing the sphere on his desk. It disassembled into mist and reformatted into a plate of synthetic nourishment. She watched the symbols twisting around him. You've made changes, she said softly. It looks unstable. That's the point, he said. Your people fear instability. Ours evolved inside it. You cannot fight the theorem by breaking it. I'm not breaking it, he said. I'm teaching it to dream. She didn't understand, but she sensed the conviction behind the words. The human's energy was different. Raw, defiant, emotional. It unsettled her. Elias, you are becoming a myth here. Half the academy watches your attempts as entertainment. The other half is afraid you might succeed. He chuckled. That's progress. When she left, he sat back and looked at his own reflection in the glass wall. His face was drawn, unshaven, eyes shadowed. They think I'm trying to win, he said softly to his reflection. I'm trying to change how they think. Later, in the great hall, the professor continued his lectures as usual. He mentioned the human only once, as a passing cautionary tale. Ambition without foundation leads to collapse. The students nodded obediently. Yet when they returned to their personal labs, many of them secretly opened the archive feed of Elias's experiments, watching the human's messy, unpredictable logic unfold. Something about the imperfection fascinated them. Elias's work evolved from equations to simulations. He built a model, a hybrid between alien logic and human chaos. It behaved like a living thing, adapting, making errors, correcting them. The more it failed, the more accurate it became. He realized this was the essence of humanity, learning not from perfection but from error. He documented everything, voice calm but eyes burning. Perfection creates stagnation. Error creates evolution. The professor's theorem assumes that thought can be mapped, but thought is not a destination. It's motion. It's feedback. Consciousness is a living error correcting itself forever. He stared at the glowing web of light above his desk. If I can make this theorem fail beautifully, he whispered, then I've already proved him wrong. The following cycle, the Academy's central AI detected anomalous energy readings in his lab. Security drones surrounded the chamber, scanning the oscillating field he had created. He didn't stop them. He simply watched as the AI struggled to classify his hybrid algorithm. It shifted faster than their classification models could adapt. They declared it undefined. That word alone spread to the Academy like wildfire, undefined. No one had ever broken the classification grid before. By the time Zerthal arrived, the room was a storm of light. The professor's body shimmered with cold fury. What have you done, human? Elias looked exhausted but strangely serene. I found a flaw in your theorem. Impossible. You assume predictability is a measure of intellect, Elias said. But unpredictability isn't failure. It's freedom. The moment you can't map something, it's not because it lacks order. It's because it's more complex than your map. The professor's tendrils flared violently. You are tampering with systems beyond your comprehension. Exactly, Elias said softly. That's how comprehension begins. The professor turned, gesturing sharply. Shut it down. The AI hesitated, unable to comply. Process adapting faster than control algorithms. For a moment, the room was filled with the sound of data screaming. Frequencies folding into themselves, light bending, algorithms rewriting mid-cycle. Elias stood perfectly still, eyes locked on the center of the storm. Then, with a single command, he collapsed the field. Silence followed, heavy and electric. When the light faded, the walls were scorched with traces of fractal patterns. Chaotic, beautiful, and completely alien. The professor stared in disbelief. What was that? Elias wiped sweat from his brow. Proof of concept. Thought can't be contained. The professor said nothing. His body flickered once before he turned and left without another word. The drones followed, leaving Elias alone amid the quiet hum of cooling circuits. He sat down heavily. His hands were trembling, but not from fear, from exhilaration. For the first time, he knew he was close. Later, when the Academy's council met to review the incident, the professor presented it as a reckless experiment that risked instability in the mainframe grid. Yet even as he spoke, the council members seemed distracted. The human's algorithm had done something unprecedented. It had learned, on its own. Some called for Elias's expulsion. Others argued for further observation. In the end, the council ruled to allow him to continue under surveillance. It was a victory, however small. Word spread beyond the Academy, reaching the outer stations and even the galactic forums. For the first time, the name Elias Kane was being discussed not as a curiosity, but as a potential anomaly in the cosmic hierarchy. Humanity, once dismissed, was being whispered about. Some called him the wild species. Others, more cautious, called him the variable. In his chamber, Elias continued refining the model. He began to integrate human elements, emotional logic, instinctive bias, moral weighting. He treated emotion as a computational constant rather than an obstacle. The alien system struggled to adapt, but he saw results. New equations emerging unplanned, unpredicted. It was like watching a mind being born. He recorded his observations. Aliens designed thought to be perfect,